Okay, let's begin our questions. So the first question is about, the origin of human beings and all the procedures, all the process of evolvement for exopolitics. So the first question is about origins of human being. Ever since the beginning of humans, did aliens participate in genetic engineering, or our ancestors evolved not just from apes or chimpanzees, but also alien races have participated in the making of our ancestors. And another aspect of this question is that did prehistoric civilizations exist? And what's the relations between aliens and religions? That's all.
Two questions. So the first question, what about the history of extraterrestrial intervention in human affairs? I believe that approximately 500,000 years ago, extraterrestrials began to intervene by genetically altering the DNA of primitive hominid species. There were multiple extraterrestrial groups that did this. Approximately between 40 to 60 different extraterrestrial civilizations in the last 500,000 years have intervened in this way and have created 22 different genetic strains of humanity, which is why we have so much diversity in different races and physiologies throughout the planet. In the course of the 500,000 years of extraterrestrial intervention in human affairs, there have been the rise and fall of many advanced civilizations. We know some of these, such as Hyperborea, Lemuria, Mu, and Atlantis, but many others we do not know because they happened so long ago. The last high point in human evolution was around 11,600 years ago, which corresponds with the end of the Younger Dryas period, where the Earth's temperature increased dramatically. And this coincides very much with the literature describing the end of Atlantis. Plato, for example, described the end of Atlantis occurring approximately 11,600 years ago. And since then, we have recovered this very high civilization.
Okay, so are you aware that whether there are some evidence, like archaeological evidence, to prove that these aliens have interfered with our DNA and created us?
Yes, there is a book describing, there are multiple books describing extraterrestrials intervening in human history, and some of these involve the manipulation of human genetics. There are scholars such as Eric von Daniken and Zechariah Sitchin that describe some of this evidence. There is also another researcher by the name of Arthur Horn who wrote a book about humanity's ancient extraterrestrial origins, and he described various points in human history where there appeared to be interventions by extraterrestrials going back many hundreds of thousands of years, and he cites archaeological evidence supporting this. And also we can add sources such as the Sumerian Kings List and then also Egyptian history, which describe extraterrestrials intervening in human affairs.
So in archaeological evidence, there are some like human skulls that have been excavated. So these skulls, are they originate from like aliens or alien origin? Are they belong to alien origin, or just like ET? Because some of the skulls are like quite extraterrestrial.
Yes, we have evidence like the elongated skulls from Paracas in Peru, and also from Egyptian mummies that have people or very long elongated skulls. And so I think what we have there are probably the hybrids, those that were a genetic combination of extraterrestrial DNA and human DNA.
So what's the relationship between aliens and religions?
Aliens were behind the establishment of the very first religions in terms of worshipping gods, where we have different religious traditions focusing on anthropomorphic entities. We are talking about extraterrestrials. Where you have religions such as in Buddhism talking about a way of life or some universal force that is much closer to the truth that extraterrestrials are not just the makers of humanity, but they are also themselves created beings whose origins is not known clearly.
Okay, now let's go to the recent 100 years of history. So last century in 20s and 30 years seemed to be like the beginning of SSP. So could you like briefly talk about how SSP started and why aliens chose to contact governments on Earth and what kind of races have contacted with the Earth's governments, including the Roswell crash in 1947 and President Eisenhower's meet with aliens. So according to history, in 1954, President Eisenhower has met 3 different kinds of alien races and signed a treaty of cooperation. Could you elaborate on this history? Thank you.
There's a lot of questions in that. So let me just take it one by one. So first,
no?
I can, yes.
Yeah, we can hear you as well. So sorry, could you repeat that, what you have answered from the very beginning?
So when we look at the history of extraterrestrials recently, we need to begin with the Second World War, which is when there were a number of encounters in Europe and also in the United States involving crashed extraterrestrial vehicles that were recovered by government authorities and then began studying these technologies either for the war effort or for the post-war era. And that's when the age of reverse engineering began during the Second World War. To begin reverse engineering these technologies, which is why in the 1950s, agreements were reached between the different US presidential administrations and extraterrestrials so that reverse engineering of these very advanced craft could begin.
Sorry, we can lost you before. So before you said 1950, the agreement reached between United States presidents, many presidents, and ETs. So what else did you talk about? That
the agreements allowed the extraterrestrials to assist American scientists to begin to understand the principles and the operations of these advanced extraterrestrial technologies that had been recovered in different crash sites. All the major countries with military infrastructures were able to begin studying technologies that were recovered. So we have the United States, we have the Soviet Union, we have France, we have Britain, and we have also China, countries with very large territories where craft were recovered or where ancient civilizations existed, where some of these advanced technologies were stored. So all of these countries had secret teams working independently or sometimes in agreement with one another to find and reverse engineer these technologies.
Okay, so why these ETs chose to cooperate with governments on Earth and what kind of races started to cooperate with governments on Earth?
There appeared to be 3 different groups of extraterrestrials that intervened on Earth. One group was a human-looking group, and they were more interested in helping humanity develop spiritually and ethically and not to create unfortunate circumstances with nuclear weapons. Another group was a reptilian-looking group, and they were working with the German secret space program during the Second World War and afterwards in Antarctica. And a third group are a grey extraterrestrials who have been working with the US government after agreements were reached in the 1950s.
German SSB chose the reptilians to cooperate with, and why the US government chose Greys to cooperate with. Because why didn't they, the governments chose to work with human-looking extraterrestrials who are very kind and want to help humankind to, evolve in a better way.
The human-looking extraterrestrials were not willing to give technology that could be weaponized for war, which is why they did not enter into agreements with either Germany or with the United States. The reptilians, however, they are an imperial race, and they were willing to give advanced technologies that could be weaponized for the war effort. And so this was why eventually the Germans reached agreements with the reptilians, and then later in the 1950s, the US government under President Eisenhower reached agreements with the Germans and the reptilians and began cooperating with them because the US wanted to also develop advanced space weapons so that they could keep up with what the Germans had developed.
So we can say that the Nordics, the human-looking ETs, they were not willing to offer like weaponized technology to human beings. They want humankind to get rid of these weapons and want to help humans to evolve in a more spiritual and ethical way, right?
Yes, that's correct. That the human-looking extraterrestrials, they wanted humanity to develop more socially responsible policies where populations were looked after, fed, that poverty was eliminated, that people had health care, that these kind of more constructive social policies were addressed, whereas in the US, the military-industrial conquest, the US military-industrial complex was more interested in just building bigger and stronger weapons and did not care about the people.
So yeah, right now we call these ETs like good ETs, bad ETs. So the good ones are the good ones called Galactic Federation Worlds, and the bad ones called the Draco Reptilian Alliance. What's your comment on this?
That is broadly correct. That there are three major alliances. One is the Galactic Federation of Worlds, which are human-looking extraterrestrials, and they're not just kind of Northern European looking. They also have different racial groups, like kind of more Asian looking groups, more groups from, say, India, Africa, that the Galactic Federation has many different types of human-looking extraterrestrial groups working with them. There is also the Draconian Empire, which are the reptilians, and there is also a group called the Orion Alliance, which is also a mixture of human-looking groups and grey extraterrestrial groups. So not all human-looking extraterrestrial groups are positive. Some are also part of a negative alliance, which is the Orion Collective.
So we know that they are fighting each other, the two major groups of aliens. So what is the current stage for their fight, for the war between each other?
There is an ongoing conflict at the moment between the different extraterrestrial groups. And we currently on planet Earth are witnessing an attempt by the Galactic Federation of Worlds to wake up humanity to what has been really happening in different countries in terms of their secret space programs. The Galactic Federation is intervening against some of the reptilian bases and the Orion bases on the moon and on Mars, and have been eliminating these. They have also been helping the Earth Alliance which is a group of uh, governments that want to help humanity free themselves of the historic oppression from these negative extraterrestrial groups and the secret agreements they reached with the cabal or the deep state, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so is the Galactic Federation worth promoting disclosure right now? Because last year, yeah, I remember last year, the end of last year, is it really official, right? Is a high official from the space head from Israel? He kind of revealed that Donald Trump almost disclosed the existence of Galactic Federation worlds. So is the Galactic Federation worlds? Who is behind this? Who is promoting like this kind of disclosure? So that this is really high official almost revealed the existence of aliens, and or Trump almost revealed that.
Yes, Professor Haim Eshed, who founded Israel's space program, created a lot of interest when he said that the Galactic Federation was working with the Trump administration and that Trump wanted to reveal the existence of the Federation, but they said that humanity is not yet ready because our technology is not sufficiently advanced. So I think this is one of the preconditions for the Galactic Federation revealing itself, that more advanced technology is released.
Okay, so about the technology in SSP, such as free energy, anti-gravity vehicles technology, and the food replicator, right? So when can these technologies be revealed to humankind? What do you think?
The release of these advanced technologies is very strongly fought over between the cabal or the deep state and the Earth Alliance or the White Hats. They are fighting over when and how much of this advanced technology should be released. The White Hats want to release a lot of it, which is why we are seeing many patent applications being released describing some of these advanced technologies, and why you have the UAP report that was released in the United States recently. But the cabal, the deep state, wants to stop all of this.
So on 25th June, DOD released a report on UAP. So this report did not officially admit the existence of the aliens, but this report somehow suggested or hinted that there are some technology like flying vehicle technology that is beyond understanding of humankind. And also in France, France also released their UFO report. So what's their purpose of doing this? And also you mentioned that there's a documentary released by Dr. Stephen Greer about the cosmic hoax, right? So that documentary suggested that there could be some false alien invasion. So there are different purposes, agendas. Or what's your idea on this? What's the purpose of every move behind governments?
I think one of the main purposes of releasing this UAP report was to make the American and the world public understand that UFOs are very real, they're very advanced, and that the US doesn't know who is flying these technologies, which I believe is a lie. They do know, but nevertheless, I think the agenda behind this lie is that they probably do want to create some kind of false flag alien event. Now, that could be either an alien invasion or it can be an alien salvation event. And I think either one is very possible, and that could happen in the next 6 months.
So are you suggesting that in the next 6 months, there will be some other UFO major events or news or information coming out?
I believe that there's going to be some kind of event that the deep state, the cabal want to unleash on the American people and the world, which involves some kind of deception involving extraterrestrial life. And so I think Dr. Greer's movie, The Cosmic Hoax, points us in this direction, that this is being planned And I expect that it can happen within the next 6 months, that some kind of announcement comes forward that extraterrestrials are here. Now, it could be that they're here to invade us or that they're here to save us. It can be presented either way, but I think we probably can expect some major announcement like this.
Okay, so the question is about Donald Trump and Biden. So is Trump related to the positive force, the alliance, the good ones, and also the Biden related to negative ET groups? What's your take on that?
Yes, I believe Donald Trump is working with the Earth Alliance and with positive extraterrestrial groups such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds to reveal the truth about our history, about advanced technologies, and to reveal some of the benefits of these technologies. And he's trying to help these all be released. Whereas Biden is working with the deep state, with the cabal, with the negative extraterrestrial groups, and his goal is to create deception, distractions, and to create conflict, even a major war. And this could be a war with Iran or with China or with Russia, that the Biden administration, I think, is very aggressive and very dangerous. So we have to be very careful about what this Biden administration can do.
Okay, so now let's talk about the SSP in China. That's what the Chinese netizens and Chinese people will care about as well. So when do you think the China's SSP started, and what kind of races do you think are cooperating with Chinese SSP or Chinese governments? And what's the agenda behind their cooperation?
Well, that's a very difficult set of questions because it involves a lot of history here. We know that Dr. Shen Shen that I described in Rise of the Red Dragon, that he was very aware of the early history of the US recovery and reverse engineering efforts of flying saucer craft. And he took that information with him to China when he went there in 1955. And so when Dr. Shen created the Chinese space program using conventional powered rockets, he also began to have contact experiences with some extraterrestrial groups that wanted to work with him and China's officials to help develop a positive future. So this began under his work in when he set up the first Chinese space rocket launch facility in Gansu province. That there were extraterrestrial groups that had bases in areas of the Gobi Desert and in Tibet that also worked with inner Earth civilizations. And so this is where there was some collaboration, some communication with Dr. Shen and other Chinese officials in sharing information so that China could keep up with what was happening in the Soviet Union and in the United States. Because I think the extraterrestrials are very interested in creating balance. They don't want any one country to dominate and control everyone else. Okay, I'm back.
Oh, yeah, you talked about ET base in Gobi Desert and Tibet. Yeah, you were talking about this before. And
yes.
Do you have anything to add to this?
Do you want me to talk about what I just presented about the Gobi Desert and Tibet, the bases? What did you hear all that, or do I need to say it again?
I heard that and also translated that as well. So do you have anything to add to this question?
No, that was it.
Okay, so do you know like what specific alien races are cooperating with Chinese government right now, and what's their like purpose agenda?
When we are talking about the different extraterrestrial races cooperating with different governments, we have different factions. In the United States, and Britain and other countries, you have a positive faction and you have a negative faction. So the negative faction are the reptilians and the Orions, and they are working with the deep state. And this is the same in China. In China, you have your positive factions and you have your negative factions. So you have the Draconians and the Orions working with some groups in China. And you also have the positive groups, the human-looking extraterrestrials that are working with other groups. And I believe that the current president of China, President Xi, is working with the white hats, with the positive extraterrestrial groups.
So are you like kind of suggesting the supreme leader in China is also cooperating with Galactic Federation of Worlds and are promoting disclosure?
Yes, this is the information that I have received, that the paramount leader in China, President Xi, is working with positive groups, and he is part of the Earth Alliance. That he is working with people like Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin, with Donald Trump, and with India's leader, President Modi, to resolve Earth's conflicts peacefully, to create cooperation with all of the major nations so that they can release advanced technologies, take care of their people, and to have peace on Earth. But the negative group, the deep state, wants to do the opposite. They are working with the reptilians and the Orions to create war, conflict, misunderstanding, and to create poverty, and to keep the Earth ignorant of these advanced technologies that have been secretly used in the secret space programs.
What do you think about like Chinese SSP? China's SSP are majorly like in the most part positive or negative? Like when it comes to SSP serving people, like is it positive or negative agenda by proportion? What do you think?
I think that the China's People Liberation Army has built a military space force that is very similar to what has been developed in the United States in terms of the US Space Force and the National Reconnaissance Office. Both have space weapons, spacecraft using these advanced technologies. And China, over the last 20 to 30 years, has been duplicating these programs as much as possible. And so I think China's capacity in space is not quite as advanced, I believe, but it is catching up to what Space Force and the National Reconnaissance Office have developed in space. We know, for example, that during the President Reagan and President Bush administrations in the 1980s and the early 1990s, that China actually was given access to some of the most advanced secret space program facilities, such as Area 51. So Chinese scientists were allowed to see what the US reverse engineering efforts were doing, so that China could share some of its own information. And so China has been working with, to a limited extent, with the US secret space program to replicate these technologies in China. This is why I believe many US defense analysts in the around when President Trump was elected became very concerned that China's secret space program was too powerful, that China now had the capacity to launch a space Pearl Harbor on the United States. So that made people very concerned. For example, Lieutenant General Stephen Quast, began to talk about China's space navy as being very powerful, and that the US needed to pay attention.
Okay, do you think there are some positive ETs? Are positive ETs mainly behind the Space Force in China or not? Are they positive, majorly positive or not, and help development of China's Space Force?
I think there have been some positive ET groups that have been helping the development of China's secret space program. That this is something that has been happening for many decades, but it is really up to China's leaders to decide how much of this technology should be shared. But of course, because in the United States and Russia and France and Britain, these technologies are shared, are not shared, then China follows a similar policy. And that means that the same negative extraterrestrial groups that are preventing these technologies from being released in the United States and Russia also have great influence in China.
So you mentioned before Dr. Cheng Xuesen, when he visited the United States, he saw some reverse engineering going on in the United States. When he went back to China, and also during his visit there, he became aware of the consciousness, the relationship between consciousness and the way of maneuvering the spacecrafts. So in 1980s and 1990s, he got the information about the SSP, and also he kind of started SSP in China, and also he started to study on telekinesis, something like the ESP, and also for decades, China has been studying this ever since. But at the end of 20th century, oh wait a second, but at the end, of last century, 1990s, the end of 1990s, 1999, everything stopped. Right now you couldn't get any support from the official governments to study this area, like ESP phenomenon. So are you aware of this history?
Yes, this is a very important aspect of the whole secret space programs, that in the 1940s, it was discovered from the crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft that the pilots had some kind of mind technology interface, that there was a connection with mental abilities and technology. And so this was very unique, and it took many decades for the US and other countries to replicate these technologies. And so now with the advanced space programs, this is something that is studied very, very closely. So yes, Dr. Shen, he did understand this, which I believe is why in the 1980s, he began to encourage the study of ESP, telekinesis, and other mental abilities, because this was, as he understood, a key aspect of being able to reverse engineer and pilot advanced spacecraft based on extraterrestrial technologies. And this is especially important when it comes to navigating space-time, that mental abilities are required. So your question about why it is that China was open to this phenomena in the 1980s and 90s, and why it in the 2000s you didn't have as much information being presented or being supported by government officials. We have the similar process happen in the United States, where in the 1970s, there was an openness to psychic remote viewing and remote influencing. But by the 1990s, it was discredited. And what this means is that this is the way in which the government officials can get some support from the public, but yet they don't want to encourage the public too much to develop these abilities themselves. They don't want private institutions or non-profit organizations developing schools of remote viewing or remote influencing, because this threatens government authority and power. And I think the same process that happened in the United States is probably what is happening in China.
So next question is about like red dragon and white dragon. And so you mentioned before, like red dragon is more aggressive, the white dragon is more like peaceful. So what do you think about these two groups? Are these two groups like secret secret organizations, forces? So what do you think about these two groups? And what do you mean about like aggressive and peaceful? And also the second question is about the pyramids, especially pyramids in China.
Yes, when we are talking about the black dragon and the white dragon, we are talking about secret societies. And these secret societies are global in reach. And the dragon is a very powerful archetype of great force and strength. And so it's not a surprise that different societies will use the archetype of a dragon for what it is that they do. And of course, this is also connected to the draconian reptilians, because not all reptilians are bad. There are some that are very aggressive and are into control and manipulation, but others are also very positive and very spiritual. So this is why we have historically different societies that some are called black dragon societies, some are called white dragon societies, and the black dragon society is described by various insiders as more negative, working with the draconian reptilians, whereas the white dragon is working with more positive groups. Yes, the red dragon in the book, I describe it as very much connected to the Communist Party ideology, and I describe it as being very focused on the more material aspect of human living as opposed to the spiritual aspect. And so you have a view of history which is based on historical materialism and looking at aspects of a society that has to be controlled through the material forces of production, whereas the white dragon is more interested in spiritual and ethical evolution.
Okay, so there's a guy called Benjamin Fulford. Okay, that gentleman, he claimed that he represents White Dragon Society from Japan, based in Japan, and also he claimed that he represents the Earth's like, positive forces, who is majorly behind liberating Earth and saving Earth, that kind of alliance organization, and also he's behind disclosure. So what do you know about this gentleman, and is his information like reliable?
I believe that Benjamin Fulford does get some good information about what is happening on Earth between the different factions and the black dragon, the white dragon, green dragon, and different societies that he describes. I think he does get some accurate information, but I think he also gets some false information. And I think this is why he has been able to operate for many years, because those that are passing on his information do this mixture of truth and falsehood, so that way he is protected, so that way he can be easily dismissed, because sometimes he says ridiculous things, but other times he says things that are very accurate. So one has to be very discerning with Benjamin Fulford's information.
Okay, about pyramids, what do you think about pyramids, especially in China?
Yes, I think some of the pyramids in China are very, very old, that they date back to the Atlantean era, that they are approximately at least 11,600 years old, if not older, that the pyramids have some advanced technologies that are hidden within them, and that the pyramids are not mausoleums. Maybe some are. Some of the smaller ones are created in imitation of the larger pyramids, but that the older pyramids, the bigger ones, I think date back at least 11, 12,000 years and do have some of these advanced technologies within them.
Another question about New Age movements, such as what mentioned in Love One, the human civilization is evolving to a higher dimension, like the ascension concept, and many information is about much information about solar flash. And what do you think about the concept ascension? And is that related to the agenda of a Galactic Federation of Worlds? And how much information is true coming from medium and channelers? So like, how can we differentiate that? And also, what's the future for humankind, the destiny for humankind?
Yes, this is a very, very important question. This era that we are in appears to be a very important one where humanity has to make a choice in terms of our evolution. Are we going to go down a path of fear and control and limitation, or are we going to go down a path of expansion, openness, and galactic connections? And it seems that there are some processes that are in play here, such as our solar system going through a part of the Milky Way galaxy where we are receiving more intense galactic rays, and that is impacting our physiology. Okay. And this is something that is very significant now, because as we enter this region of the galaxy, we are being bombarded with very intense cosmic energy that impacts the sun, that impacts the earth, that influences our magnetic field. And so this is where the sun can actually create some major solar flares and impacts human consciousness. So this is where the ascension information becomes very important, because I do believe we are at a fundamental point of evolution.
So the Galactic Federation of Worlds, they have forces are here, and some positive ETs are here. Are they here for the ascension? Basically for the ascension, or did they participate in the ascension process as well?
All of the major extraterrestrial groups are here because they know this ascension process is happening right now. Some are here because they think humanity will fail and that many billions of people will suddenly lose their lives or will be involved in cataclysmic events, and that this will be a rich harvest for the negative groups from Orion and from the Draconian Empire. Other groups, such as the Galactic Federation of Worlds, believe that humanity can be helped to evolve, to go through the ascension event, so that hundreds of millions or billions of people all over the world are able to ascend into a higher state of consciousness and create a utopia on Earth that will become a very powerful and important member of the Galactic Federation in future years.
Okay, can you make some predictions about when will that happen? When will the first contact between humans and ETs, the public contact, happen?
Well, this can happen very quickly with this false flag alien event that I believe is being prepared now, and that any time in the next few months, we could have a false flag event. Now, if this doesn't happen, that means that the white hats or the positive groups, the White Dragon Society, have succeeded, and that they have removed the influence of the deep state. And so that would then mean that we will probably have contact happening, positive contact with the real positive human-looking extraterrestrials happening maybe in 5 to 10 years' time. But it all depends who wins this power structure, this power struggle between the deep state and the cabal and the Earth Alliance.
So last question, what's your suggestion to us? So should we do some meditation to raise our consciousness, and also do some practice qigong to raise our consciousness?
Yes, raising consciousness is very, very important at this point. Doing some kind of meditation is very helpful. Working with crystal technologies also can help. The star tetrahedron is a very good crystal to work with. But also in terms of our own consciousness, being more loving, more compassionate, more forgiving, these are very important. Being in nature a lot, spending time in mindful connection with nature also is very, very helpful.
Thank you so much. It's like 1.5 hours, a very long time for taking this interview. Thank you for being here.
You are welcome. Thank you.